3, 2, 1, Lego! Welcome back to Engineer's Toy Box. This is the robot game rule video that I promised you guys last week. I think I'm actually going to end up splitting this into multiple videos because there's just so much to cover and I don't want to do an hour-long video of rules. I think that's going to be a little bit too much. So I think just for everyone's information, I think what I'm going to do is I will do a brief overview, which is what I'm going to do now, kind of the general stuff, and then I'm going to do specific videos for each mission model, explaining the rules, and then I will just playlist those all together for all of you on YouTube, so you can just watch them all in a row if you want to do it that way, movie theater style, or if you just want to consume them, one at a time, you can do it that way as well. So I think that's what we're going to do. So let's get into it. We've got the robot game rulebook open. There's a lot going on the field. Just a lot going on here. It's very colorful. So let's see. Well, that page isn't quite so much. First FLL Challenge, introduction. So we got this nifty pie chart that explains, robot design, robot game, innovation project, core values. These are all equally weighted portions of the competition. So just to touch on it briefly, a lot of people get caught up in robot game, robot design, and think that that's like the most important part. And it's not really. It's how your robot performs, which is the robot games, and robot design, those make up half of it. And then your innovation project and your core values make up the other half. So robot kind of makes up half of it. But there's a difference there too, in that robot design is what you intended your robot to do, or the thought process you used in designing it. So robot game measures the performance. So you can have done design really well. In fact, I run into this all the time at work, right? Where design work can have been done very well, and yet the outcome still isn't good because of unexpected things. Robot game and robot design are split by that same gulf between them. So they are two separate entities, even though they tackle the same subject matter. So I just thought I'd point that out. Let's see what else we got here. So we've got a note about engineering notebooks. We've got an app. I don't have a spike. We'll get to why and what I'm going to do in the meantime. So we'll get to that later. So game this year is Masterpiece. And we're going to be going around and we're going to be triggering these mission models to activate technology that's going to cause audience experiences. So it looks like it'll be a pretty fun game. We'll see as we get into like the more specific portions of the models, how this is all going to go. So this next page, really I get better at using page down. We've got some handy references here. So they tell you where to find the mission model, the instructions to build the mission models. Brief note on number 2, I would recommend putting your mat on a table. If you can build your own regulation table, I highly recommend that. It is beneficial. What else do I want to say on that? If you are going to put it on the floor, choose a hard, flat surface that's smooth too. So linoleum's pretty good. Hardwood floors are pretty good. If concrete is what you have, that's fine too. I would avoid tile just because of the irregularity of tile. Like, it's rhythmic, but there's irregularities to the surface, right? And that's going to throw off your programming depending upon the method that you use. Even some of the more advanced methods of sensing your environment could be thrown off by changes in height or pitch due to tile. So I wouldn't do that. If it's the best you can do, it's the best you can do. One way you could, how do I want to phrase that? Improve things without a full table is if you can get like a sheet of plywood, like even like 1/8" Luan plywood. That would give you a smooth surface. If you already have a hard surface and you just need to make it smooth and level, the plywood would help. So that would be a way you could do that. There's lots of good ideas out there for building fields that are more cost effective, using somewhat cheaper materials, but then anyway, I can go into that in a separate video if people are interested in that. Some references for where you get your dual lock placement diagrams, and then mission model setup, read the rules. So 4, that's where we're going to be heading in a little bit here. Robot game guiding principles, we'll get to that. The glossary, highly recommend you read it. In the rules, when it says use the dictionary definition of the words, it's very helpful that they give you a glossary with those dictionary definitions of the words, or the dictionary definitions from the dictionary they used. So that's very helpful. I highly recommend you read it. Robot path diagram and score sheet. Don't know what the path diagram is, but score sheet, we'll get to that at the end when we're done with all the missions. We'll go through the score sheet. And we've got the table. So I went through the rules yesterday very briefly, kind of for myself, just to kind of like figure out how much content there is here. There's a fair bit. This is very interesting to me, this split home that they've got going on with the dual launch areas. I think there's going to be some interesting strategic things you could potentially do with that. I think there's also going to be some challenging things related to interrupts and precision tokens. Some of you may already know where I'm going with that. If you do, well, congratulations. You know where I'm going with this. Is there anything else I want to mention here? I don't think so. So I guess, yeah, there's a left launch area, right launch area. I don't think they draw any distinction between the two. So they're labeled, but I don't know that I don't think that became relevant anywhere in the rules. But we'll keep going. Robot game guiding principles. So they're going to briefly go over some of the key points of things. So you're building a robot out of Legos. I'm not going to read these to you. I'm just going to synthesize them very briefly. So you're building a robot out of Legos. You're going to compete in a 2.5-minute match to score points by completing missions. You're going to launch from either of these two areas and attempt to complete missions in any order you choose. You don't have to do them sequentially. That's not a requirement. The robot is programmed to return to either home area at any time. So what they're saying there is that if you want to make changes to your robot during the course of the match, like swap an attachment or select a different program, your robot has to come back to the home area for you to do that. It can do that at any time. There's not specific times or you have to complete the mission in order to come back to home. It's nothing like that. You start with 6 precision tokens. We'll get into this a little bit in more detail later, but you start with 6 precision tokens every time you touch the robot when it's outside of home or the launch area. You're going to lose a precision token because essentially the gist of it is your programming wasn't precise enough for the robot to drive itself back to base after doing a mission. Therefore, you lose a precision token because you weren't precise enough. 5, they're just telling you that only the robot can move things between the two homes. So if you bring something back to the left home, your team member cannot run it over to the right home to then have it picked up there to take to a mission that maybe is very close to or something, right? So you can't move the things. Although now that I'm thinking about it, there isn't actually a thing here. So what they're saying is during the match, only the robot can move things between the homes. But prior to the match, you could set things up. You could set things up at either home. So if you had some people that you wanted to deliver to the area of the field near the right home, you could stage those in right home, and you could stage other people in left home, and then you could just drive your robot to either home to pick them up during the course of the match, and you've kind of cut down some of the travel time. Mission requirements must be visible at the end of the match, score unless otherwise stated in the mission. So that's just a thing of saying scoring conditions are judged at the end of the match. So if you were to score some points, but then in the course of the match, your robot bumps back into the model and de-scores those points at the end of the match, all that matters is what is the position of the model at the end of the match. So if you had it scored, and then in the course of the match you unscore it, and at the end of the match it's still unscored, it's unscored. Teams have 3 official matches, but only the highest score count. This often confuses people. So this is a best of 3, we'll say. You are you're competing against yourself. You're not competing directly against everybody else. You're competing to have the best possible robot run that you can manage. And then your highest score is how you are ranked. So if you have matches of 63, 75, and 82, the 82 is the only one that really matters as far as the rankings are concerned. And then just a note on core values, gracious professionalism, and referees. This is new in the last few years because it was a thing before I left. There is a spot on the... Oh, actually, they show it right here. There's a spot at the end of the score sheet which has these categories for developing, accomplished, or exceeding in gracious professionalism. So these actually factor into... There's, if I recall correctly, there's a formula that the judges have and like a program that will compile their scores from the rubrics from your judgings and your robot scores and these scores, and it will mash all that together, do a bunch of math, I think, and then it will basically spit out suggestions for how the awards should be done. And then the judges will take that. It simplifies their job instead of them having to debate every person and like, well, is this person better than this person? Like the computer system basically roughs it out, and I want to say it suggests. I haven't been involved in the official judging-ish stuff. I haven't done that, but my understanding is that it basically gives a top 3 for each thing, and then the judges can be like, yeah, I think that one's right. I think that should be flipped, and yada yada. So. Not my area of expertise, but that is my understanding of how all of this kind of flows into awards. Okay, good thing to note here. If a team does not show for their match, they will score no points for gracious professionalism. However, if a team arrives and does not run the robot, but does explain what has happened, they can get gracious professionalism scores of 2, 3, or 4 points, depending on the gracious professionalism they demonstrate. So this is important because later on in the rules, there's a mission that depends on the other team being there. So if I come up to the table and I'm going to run my robot and the other side is empty, there's a mission where there are points I can't score because there's nobody at the other side. And this goes for no-shows and virtual events. So if you're doing virtual events, you also can't score those points because there's nobody on the other side of the table for you to cooperate with. So if you don't show up for a match because you just don't feel like it, that's kind of not gracious professionalism, is essentially what they're kind of pointing out here. So we'll go through the example mission layout here. So this is kind of telling you how rules are structured in the manual. So you're going to have a picture of the model that shows you the model, and then you're going to have its location on the field, so it's going to show you, where it's located and what's kind of around it. You've got some ancillary information, kind of some narrative information over in this section here. And then the black text under the mission describes main requirements, and red text gives you points scored, or how many points for said condition. And then you got the blue italic text for added in requirements, leniency, or other helpful facts. That might be where things like methods go. I don't remember seeing any methods in this year's game, so we'll have to look at that as we go through each mission and see if there's any methods. Then there'll be some pictures at the bottom of the block. Those will be either examples that don't score, partially score a lower value, score the maximum value, and it can vary, and it's not every scoring condition. Just some examples to illustrate, we'll say, common or edge cases. Equipment inspection. So this is one of the areas where the split home comes into play, or I thought it might. It doesn't. So what they're using now for your inspection area is the launch area. So that's the quarter circle area that's got grid lines in it on either end of the table. That's the inspection area. And oh, that's interesting. That's new. You only have one option. You must fit in the No, you don't have to fit in the inspection area. Oh, this is interesting. As I'm thinking this through, So if you fit in the inspection area, you get 20 points. If you don't fit in the inspection area, you get no points. But you can still play the match, even if you don't fit in the inspection area. So, interesting. And, okay, so real quick, I want to cover this. I'm probably running long for this first video, but a lot of referees will use their clipboard or a binder as the 12-inch, which, do I have a clipboard or a binder handy? I do not. But typically that's going to be just a smidge over 12 inches. So that it's very handy, nifty, quick. People will just do that instead of trying to find a ruler and like, are you under the clipboard? Yep. Okay, cool. You're good to go. So if you don't see them getting out tape measures or rulers, like, it's fine. Fairly common practice is to just use a binder because it's a little bigger than an 11 by 7.5 sheet of paper. You know, when you add the top margin and the bottom margin, you're about 12 inches. 12 inches, good enough. Clipboard, kind of same thing. So also important here, get to your match a little bit early because then you can do the inspection and then you're not rushing to try to fit everything into the area, get an okay from the ref, get your 20 points, and then sort everything back out. Because some teams, they bring a lot of stuff, and so they have to, like, Rubik's Cube this thing together to get it all in there, and then they got to, like, untangle all their stuff and put it, you know, spread it out so it's the way they want it to actually run the match. So if you get there early, you can kind of set up early. Don't get there, like, 20 minutes early, but, you know, if you're there 3-4 minutes early, you can do this, and it'll be a little more relaxed as you do it. So that covers kind of this intro part. We're going to start getting into the missions. You can probably see that at the bottom of the screen, just starting to show up, mission 1. So we're going to cut the video here, and then we'll start going into the mission-specific rule videos. So hope you stay tuned. Hope this was informative, and I will catch you on the next side.